Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us today. We broadcast 2 hours, Monday through Friday, currently from Missouri, atop the Ozark Mountains. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli. Rich Scheben's with us. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vincent Finelli. How are you doing this morning? You know, I always ask you that question. It's almost like a canned, sympathetic response. How are you doing? And I usually regret it.
Yeah, I know, but it's too late.
Oh, Rich, I'm frosted. Let me tell you why. So I'm going to ask you, what's new?
Okay. I'm so glad you asked. So, as long as I'm in Missouri, I thought I would lower the electric bills for Laclede Electric Cooperative members. And so I threw my hat in the ring again. My family's like, geez, what, Dad, have you lost your mind? And I say, yeah, I have. But I think it's worth trying again. So here is, I just got off the phone this morning, just before the broadcast, with the CEO of Laclede Electric Cooperative, and we're going word by word with my bio. Now, my bio, I thought I'd read it to the class. I wrote it last night, and I thought I needed to say some things that I've never said before. Now, what they want me to say is, who my family is, whether I'm a Christian, how long I've bought electricity from Laclede Electric Cooperative, where I live, what I do, those kinds of things. And I have 110 words in which to do it. Well, I just got off the phone with the CEO, and we were reviewing line by line, word by word, my 110-word bio, of which 3 words are my name and my age. So I decided to take a different tack on what I was going to say about myself this time, because the other stuff didn't work. The stuff I said before was who I am, what I did, my accomplishments, I've been married. That didn't work. So here's what I said, and I'm going to quote. Now, this is subject to a little bit of revision by the CEO, and he wanted to change a few words, and I told him that, well, your rule is 110 words, and if you want to change it, I'll be glad to discuss it with you and review your suggestions, but those changes that you want are going to put it over 110 words. So here we have a 110-word rule that we are going to violate, not because I wanted to. Mine is exactly 110 words. His is going to be a few more words, but here it is. Quote, Vincent Finelli, 67, an outsider, is a most unusual candidate. He is known to despise politicians, liars, and dishonesty. Chosen by Laclede Electric Cooperative members demanding lower electric bills, he is running for the 4th time. Never before has anyone done that. He's been a farmer, a 50-year mechanic, race car driver, inventor, teacher, fireman, marshal, founder of 5 corporations, father, husband, volunteer, and a national Monday through Friday radio broadcasters competing with the biggest names in radio. Vincent is the only candidate who has designed and built a solar electric power plant that currently provides electricity to Laclede Electric Cooperative members at 2 cents per kilowatt hour. bachelor's degree 1976, master's degree 1978. He designed Fortune 100 computer systems that lowered customers' bills. Period. That's the end of my bio. Any comments, Rich Scheben?
Yeah, why don't you end it with a question mark? Something like, what if every patriotic American stood for principle, wasn't selfish enough to desire to get everyone's approval, sacrificing job money for principle to help others?
Yeah, well, that exceeds the 110 words, and I am 100% certain that before I was able to discuss this with the CEO of the Cleveland Electric Cooperative, he was on the phone with the attorney trying to figure out if it was okay or not. But see, they say this is a biography, so I can't ask a question in a biography. These are statements of fact. Okay? Right. So that. No,
I understand. I was just putting an exclamation point with the question mark to get people's attention, because that's what I just said is exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, you're right.
Being a patriotic American, you're standing for principle. You try not to be selfish, and give people ideas and solutions, and actually be proactive in reducing people's electricity bill. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to me that people don't understand that. And this is just a microcosm or a micro example of what's happening in America. It's I'll give you an economic 101 analogy. It's money shuffling, creative accounting, non-productive, non-earning money being funneled from the little people to the aristocracy. And that's exactly what's happening in a utility company. And that's why people, when they run to safety, they go to utility companies, because utility companies are a great example of maintaining the status quo. In other words, feathering the nest, whether it be the board members, CEO, CFO, same thing. Same thing is happening in corporate America at the highest levels, and big government at the highest levels. And the little people are being lied to, propagandized. There's the hoaxes and false flags that go with it there. But when you have a monopoly like utility companies and you have no competition, basically they can do all the bread and circuses and hot dogs and free things and hoopla they want to basically cover ideas and solutions that's going to benefit the people. So, and we've talked about this. I don't see, unless you can get to the database of voters, and I'll be honest with you, I think the vote, even at that level, just like every other level, is fixed. I think it's rigged. So even if you can get to the database of voters, I strongly, and not a conspiracy theorist, I'm not trying to be a cynic, but I really doubt you would be elected, because the aristocracy controls the votes in the back room. Let me ask you this, Vince. Do the people watch the voting process as the ballots come out of the box? Are they in front of the public, or is it being done in the back room?
It's done in the back room. And
I rest my case. My case.
All right, well, let me tell you how the back room is. So I said, I want to see the vote. Last time. This will be in August. That will be my fourth attempt at this, running for the board. At time number 3, which was last year, I said, I didn't believe the vote. I couldn't believe that people were that dumb, that they would not vote for, because my platform was lower electric bills. I couldn't believe that wasn't a runaway success, but it wasn't. And I wanted to see the votes. So I told the CEO that I and my son want to be in the room when the votes are counted. I said, okay. They put me against the wall, and they would not let me get out of my seat to actually look. They had multiple people who were counting the votes in the back room. It was not in public. It was not in front of everybody. It was in the back room. And it was at the Cowan Civic Center. And you were there. You were at the Cowan Civic Center. So imagine that's where the Get Prepared Expo was, class, in Lebanon, Missouri. Spelled Lebanon, Missouri. And there were thousands of people there. There's a little stage, and I was on stage along with the other candidates. We were on camera, and that's where they gave away the prizes, and that's where they announced that if your birthday was X number of years, you got that many dollars credited toward your electric bill. And they gave away appliances, small appliances, countertop appliances, and TVs and things like that. And everybody got hot dogs and potato chips and soda and water and a cookie. And the whole thing cost $65,000 for that night. Now, what they've done is they've turned the annual board of directors election, that annual meeting, into a carnival. They have a band. I mean, really? You need a band? Well, it's ridiculous. And they open this thing up for anybody who is able to get through the door. And get through the door means you either walk or come in on a wheelchair, okay? Or you hobble in. Whatever it is, you can come in there and you can sit down, you get a hot dog, and you get the food, and you can listen to the band, and you can clap, and you can swing and sway. And then if you're paying attention, you might actually vote for the candidates. The candidates don't speak first. They speak toward the end of the meeting. But the votes, and what people do is they come in and they get a free prize. So if you are a voting member, you get a magazine in the mail. In the back of this magazine is your ballot. And you bring that in. And you fill out who you want to vote for. And there are candidates from each district. There are 3 districts. There are 2 candidates for each district, plus candidates like me who are running on petition. And you get to vote for as many as 3 of them. So you can vote for people outside of your own district, which is ridiculous. So people, and I've been in the audience. I've sat down, and these 2 old biddies next to me are saying, I don't remember, who's that guy we always vote for? They can't remember the guy they always vote for, but they always vote for him. And they try it, and they combine their IQs so they can figure out who that person is that they want to re-elect. Anyway, they would not let me count the votes. They would not let me out of my chair. They would not let my son out. They had their lawyer there to ensure that I was well behaved and I didn't get up out of my chair. So was I there for the count? Yes. Did I see the count? No. Because they wouldn't let me. And we're going to address that this year. When I'm on stage, I'm going to address that. I'm going to suggest that the membership get up off their seats and go and watch the vote. And I'm going to suggest that if they made a mistake in casting their ballot, because they can walk in the door, get their free prize, drop off their vote, and leave. So last year it was an extension cord. It's like a 15-foot extension cord with neon lights on each end. Pretty nice. Probably cost us, I don't know, $15 or $20 for each extension cord. 1,000 people vote. I mean, really? $15,000 for extension cords? Really? That's what they do. So they waste our money, and they buy votes with this carnival. You could call it a circus. There are no clowns other than the people on the stage. We'll be right back. So, class, this is a microcosm that we're using as a lesson to show you what corporations are required to do and how they behave. Every state requires a corporation to have an annual or a regular shareholders meeting. In the case of Laclede Electric Cooperative, they say that the members, that would be someone who buys electricity from them, would be an owner of the corporation. But that's really not true. And I can prove that. And I will prove that on stage. Because if I actually were an owner of the corporation, I could ask what the compensation of the management is. I could ask what the payments to the attorneys, how much we're paying the attorneys. I could ask that and get answers. I could ask, how many suits have we been involved in? Who is suing us for what, how much, and why? And what's the status of those suits? So as an owner, I would be able to do that, but I can't because they will not give me that information. Have I asked? Absolutely. I've asked, how many suits is the corporation involved in? I'm not going to tell you. How much are we paying you, the CEO? I'm not going to tell you. How much do we pay the vice presidents? I'm not going to tell you. How much do we pay the attorneys? I'm not going to tell you. So I just proved to you that I'm not an owner of the corporation, because if I were, I'd have those answers. So every state requires a corporation to have an annual or regular shareholders meeting. And that'd be the equivalent of the members meeting, because they say the members are the shareholders. And the meeting is necessary to elect a board of directors and to conduct business, other regular business, and provide the annual reports as to what the corporation is doing. So that's what the purpose of the annual board of directors meeting is. It is not to be a circus. It is not to have fun and games and prizes and hot dogs and to be a carnival. But that's what it's become. And I've challenged the CEO of Laclede Electric about that. And I have said that he's allowed the annual board of directors meeting to be a carnival. And it is. And it costs $65,000 for that evening's festivities, which, if the members actually paid attention to when I said that the last time, there'd be a riot. $65,000 in my neighborhood will buy a manufactured house. And they waste it on hot dogs. And you ought to see the people. At the end of the meeting, they've got some hot dogs left over. So these people, they have an armful of hot dogs. Imagine this. Imagine those white styrofoam takeout containers. And imagine people carrying them up from their belt line all the way up to their chin, holding them down with their chin and holding them up with their arms. And of course, those people are overweight, right? And they are. So, Rich, those are my comments about the annual meeting. I'm going to be there in the end of August, and it'll be videoed, and I'll ask Ron Gibson to put it up on his channel so you can see what Vinny looks like and what he's like just before he got arrested. Okay?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I'll make a couple comments. You mentioned about those two older ladies who couldn't remember who they normally vote for. And see, this is part of the breaking your will, making us submissive, repeating the same jargon and gobbledygook all the time. People are afraid to think outside the box. And I can't tell you how dangerous that is for America when ignorance, apathy, and indifference takes hold like that. It turns America into a death sentence. And this is one of the reasons I call for public forums and citizen review boards, because the status quo gets to do whatever they want with bread and circuses. And this is not just at the micro level like we're discussing now, but it's also at the federal level, at the government level, at the big corporate oligarchy level. You know, I think if instead of spending $65,000 for this shindig, it's just like giving campaign donations to Congress. You know, when they go out and stump for their election, they use that money any way they want. They can travel with it. They can eat great meals with it. They often keep it. It goes under the table for who knows what. And what if the people could vote and say, okay, we don't want to give campaign donations out. We want that to go to the people. What if $65,000 went for everybody's bill reduction instead of having this shindig?
Hold that thought. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com, offgridmontana.com. But I want to share a preparedness tip. Actually, it's something of frustration, but I think everybody needs to know about it. So a Toyota Tundra came over to our farm here in Missouri, and it's a 2008 model. And our son was doing an inspection of this particular vehicle, and the radiator had multiple leaks that had been patched, aluminum radiator. What happened was the previous owner put the wrong antifreeze in it, and it ate the radiator. And we're looking at probably, if you brought it to a shop, maybe a $500-600 job, because all the coolant has to be flushed out of the engine, the radiator, the heater core, and the right fluid has to be put in. So what I'm telling you is I doubt the people behind the counter at the automotive parts stores are going to tell you the right coolant antifreeze. They're not going to tell you because they don't know. So you're going to have to do your own research. I probably will do a broadcast about this when we have more time. But there's red, pink, blue, yellow, light yellow, green, and they all have different purposes, and they're not necessarily compatible, and some of them will eat the radiators and some of them won't. So I want you to keep that in mind. But here's another component. So this Toyota Tundra, this is their largest pickup truck, was here. And in order to check the brakes and things, the wheels had to come off. Well, front wheels came off really difficultly. I mean, it was very, very difficult. They were oxidized in place. The aluminum wheels on the steel hubs, cast iron hubs, oxidized, and they actually had to be lubricated and pounded off with a board and a sledgehammer gently, but they came off. The rear ones, can't get them off. We cannot, we jacked up the vehicle, lubricated it, tapped it with a 4x4 across the wheel with on the tire with a 3, 4, 5 pound sledgehammer. It will not come off, neither rear wheel. What I'm trying to tell you, class, is that if you live in an area that has road salt and beet juice, your wheels will rust in place and you will not be able to get them off. So even if you do have a spare tire and a jack and all the tools, you won't be able to necessarily get these wheels off. So what do? Well, what I did on the wheels that did come off, I painted them with a very fine coat with a little brush, like an elementary school round, half-inch diameter paintbrush, tempera paint kind of paintbrush. I painted the hub where it mates to the aluminum magnesium wheel with a very light coat of fully synthetic red grease, just a very, very light coat. If you put too much on it, the grease will fly up and it will impede your braking ability. So just a little bit, just so that surface where the wheel and the hub attach, so you can get it off next time. That's one thing. And I always paint the wheel studs and wheel bolts with a very light coat of fully synthetic grease. But you have to torque them and you have to pay attention to make sure they don't come loose because you've just lubricated them. Okay, that's what I do. So do your own research before you try that. I'm not suggesting you do any of that, but that's what I do. Okay, learn about it before you do it. Do some more research. And the next thing is Chevrolet pickup trucks have the spare tire under the pickup bed. And what you do, in Dodge too, what you do is you get the tire changing to the wheel changing tools and the jack, and they have a long rod, and you insert this rod where the bumper is, and you unscrew, if you will, the cable system that lowers the spare tire. Well, the problem is that the release mechanism locks in place. So even though you can get the car down from under the bed, you can't get the tire off the tire hold down cable because the mechanisms, every one I've seen, is rusted in place. Every single one. You literally have to put the vehicle up on a lift and have two people work and bang and lubricate and use wrenches and hammers to loosen the wheel from the hoist, if you will, that holds the tire up. So what I'm trying to tell you is, just because you have a spare tire, just because you think you've kept it fully inflated, doesn't mean you're going to be able to change your tire. You need to try it and see if it works before you need it, because it probably will not work if you live in an area that has road salt and beet juice. Those are my comments, Rich Scheben. I just want to share that.
Oh, well, that's one of the reasons why I always talk Economics 101, Vince, because it's pretty obvious that forced obsolescence is obvious, especially with the crap they put on the roads with beet juice, and they want erosion, they want consume. Our whole GDP, which is a bunch of crap, is measured by consumption, at least 70% of it right now, and we've actually gone from a manufacturing-based economy to a service-based economy. Actually, we've exported inflation and imported deflation. So when you look at our service economy, that's like 75% of the economy right now. So when they use GDP, and I talk about this all the time, how it's a phony, not by happiness unit of measure for the bottom 93%, because it takes $4 of debt to create $1 of GDP. How is that even legitimate? How is there common sense to that? That's like you bragging to me that you have $1 million of net worth, but at the end of the paragraph in the last sentence, you say you have $2 million of debt. It just doesn't even make sense. So this is one of the reasons, folks, that we always talk about little ideas and solutions where you can save some money. You know, we're in a debt-backed system. Credit is a fuel for our economy, but we're seeing less demand for credit, and this is why interest rates are falling. And this is a barometer of our economy getting weaker. People are going to be looking more for safety and less risk. So, unfortunately, I see too many people at upper echelons asking for an increase in long-term rates, which will screw the little guy because he's not going to be able to refinance and get out of debt in a time, especially when earning growth is going down. And when I say increasing long-term rates, and you know I've been talking about QE for the people for years, if they take the 10 and 30 year and make it go lower to zero, possibly even negative, I know it makes no sense, but nothing makes sense. Everything is made for the status quo. As you can see, the little guy is not gaining ground. And Vince, I'm just going to mention several articles here, and the titles say it all. This first one's on Zero Hedge. It wasn't great news. Multiple job holders soar record high. So when you see the jobs report come in, we still have almost 100 million people out of work. We have people getting multiple jobs, and that's one of the reasons why the jobs numbers for June came in pretty decent. Plus, a lot of students are out of school. They're getting part-time jobs, and there's going to be more revisions to that because job numbers always have revisions later to the downsize. Next article. Haven't seen this in over 9 years. Small business employment collapses like in March of 2008. Next article. Americans aren't paying their credit card debt. What could go wrong? So many people who are trying to live are using their credit cards and going deeper and deeper in debt. Next article. U.S. consumer debt is now breaching levels last reached during the 2008 financial crisis. Next article. Fed's favorite inflation indicator stagnates as U.S. savings rate sits at 6-year lows. Next article. Interest rates around the world are coming down. The new hysteria, rate cutting rationalization. New vehicle sales fall to 1999 levels. First domino in global downturn. Deutsche Bank parallels to Lehman. Job growth in labor force contracted by 600,000 in 2019. Folks, this is one of the reasons that we always talk about ideas and solutions, because you just look at the floods in the Midwest. You know, Tennessee, the Ohio Valley, Missouri, Nebraska, everything, from corn, soybeans, you name it, everything is going to get more expensive. And that's why preparedness is so important. That's one of the reasons we talk about, you know, living a simple life. And you've heard me quote The Simple Life of Noah Dearborn. It's a movie with Sidney Poitier. It's got to be probably close to a 20-year-old movie by now. And it talks about the greedy lawyer and how he quit his job to buy a winery and grow grapes. And we have to stop allowing the powers that be to make you adopt to being oppressed. We have to control our own destiny and adapt for a plan B. And that's why gardening is so important, folks, because there's so much uncertainty. Everything is rigged. And Vince, just like talking about at the federal level, corporate America, oligarchy level, the big government level, and the example that you gave with your local utility company when there's no competition. You know, we've had a so-called expansion, but the excess liquidity, just like quantitative easing and all these programs they have, always leads to a misallocation of capital resources. But as with these articles I just mentioned and the examples you're mentioning with vehicles, liquidity is going to recede. We are going to have an economic cycle that's going to be for the downturn. Donald Trump inherited a disaster. The fact that this has been, he's been keeping us above water this long is a miracle. But reality is going to set in. Everybody is admitting the fact that we are in an unsustainable end of future rates of growth because we're at the end of an economic cycle. So so what do we do about it? You know, we're getting all these distractions. I mean, here's clueless Pelosi says, "Mega hats make America white again." I mean, we're living in Stupidville. I mean, that's about the biggest racist comment you can make. Another article: Brits abandon Facebook as usage plummets. People, we have to remember that Facebook, Google, Amazon, they have billions of dollars of contracts with the CIA for cloud services. That's their home run pitch. So AI is going to use, and I use the term use, every host, and the key word, the code word for host is humans, to tell you what to think and how to be controlled. Now, when we've moved into such a corrupt system that when you look at the, I have to ask, where are the whistleblowers? You know, you look at what's happened with the DOJ, the FBI, the NSA. That's literally helped Hillary Clinton and the DNC collude with Russia, and not just Uranium One. We've cost the taxpayers tens of millions of dollars for a failed presidential coup, treason, sedition, espionage, racketeering, censorship, surveillance, crimes against the First and Second Amendment, ignoring antitrust monopoly laws, FISA fraud. We have to do something, folks.
Yeah, we'll be right back. I've got 4 comments. Rich Sheben's with us, and I've got 4 comments based on what you've said, Rich. I believe you said something like campaign donation goes to who knows what. And some of those campaign donations go to the Epstein syndrome. That would be underage girls. You mentioned common sense. Norm Shealy is writing a book. He mentioned it yesterday, and the title of the book is called Who Killed Common Sense? I'm looking forward to reading that book. You mentioned Facebook. The founders, there were 2 founders of Apple Computer, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Steve Jobs passed away of pancreatic cancer. Steve Wozniak is still with us. And Steve Wozniak says, I'm paraphrasing, dump Facebook or you will have no privacy. And he dumped Facebook around the same time I did last year. I had a Facebook account that I used just to let you know who was going to be on the air with us. Period. That was it. I didn't say watch my dog walk backwards or look at these images or these selfies. None of that nonsense. And then you mentioned, so dump Facebook, class. And it's, you'll probably feel so good after you've done it. Give Mark Zuckerberg the heave-ho, throw him overboard, figuratively. And you mentioned multiple jobs. So what was going through my mind when you said multiple jobs was that, so let's say you're at the class reunion, the class of 1996, and someone gets up to the microphone on stage and says, I'm so glad you're all here. It's wonderful to see all our old friends, and we just want to know who's the most successful. So we're just going to take a quick survey to find out which one of you is the most successful and holds down the most part-time jobs. So which one of you holds down the most part-time jobs, because we're going to give you the crown for being the most successful of our class. That's where we're headed. Rich?
Well, I tell you, I use that word success with. I think we can do a whole show and debate about success because, is success avoiding the rule of law? Is success eliminating antitrust laws? Is success lies, propaganda, false flags, and hoaxes? Does truth mean anything anymore? What's success? Is it just money? Or could it be free time? Could it be adventure? Could it be, experiences? Could it be a balance in life of all the above, which I think is the right answer? Here's an article right here that shows that Wikipedia has altered, you mentioned Epstein, altered Epstein's bio at 8:27 in the morning, and then a second time at 10:30, omitting Bill Clinton. So, so what's real? Even at the highest levels, I'm going to paraphrase Kevin Shipp. He's a hero. He's a CIA whistleblower. That's why I said, where are all the whistleblowers from the DOJ, the FBI, the NSA? Where, we've had a failed presidential coup. We've had treason, sedition, espionage, censorship, surveillance, racketeering, up for the highest bidder. FISA frauds. Kevin Shipp, I'm gonna just paraphrase. This is at the highest levels now, folks. Okay? Hillary Clinton Foundation, or the Clinton Foundation, was a major international charity fraud. Clinton and the Democrats ran scared and produced a false dossier when she wasn't elected. Hillary paid at least $10 million sent through the DNC, the Democrat National Committee, then laundered by the Clintons' law firm, who paid Fusion GPS, who had direct communications to the FBI, our FBI, who hired former MI6 spy, foreign spy, and they give so much crap to President Trump when he talks to foreign people. Anyway, this foreign spy was named Christopher Steele. I think this audience knows that, to gather anti-Trump information from Russian intel. Again, foreign, not proven, just made up. So collusion, treason, sedition, and espionage was for sale to the highest bidder. And then the dossier was given to Brennan to start the coup. Then the dossier was intentionally used to cover up crimes, which was a distraction at the NSA level. Crimes like obtaining information on all the quarries of people who are enemies of the Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Democrat crowd. So basically to cover up spying of the American people by the NSA. And basically all of this and more was briefed by President Obama. This way, when people have the guts to say the truth, the Shaver Coxes of the world, Tommy Robinsons of the world, free these people. If we don't have freedom of speech, we won't have freedom, or liberty, or rule of law.
Hey, Rich, you want to do another hour?
Yeah, what the hell?
Let's do another hour. And we're going to expose more of the criminality that's going on. Rich Scheben and I will be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Rich Scheben is with us. I just want to mention on Friday, we're going to go after some criminals. And that's my term for them. Joe Simona will be joining us with Steve Elkins. And I, the three of us, are frosted about homeowner association regulations and rules. And Joe Simona lives in Michigan, and he has the same statue that my mom had of the Virgin Mary. My mom had it in her garden in Virginia. She had it in her home before that, and she left it here at her garden in Missouri. Joe has the same small statue. It's probably 18 inches, maybe 24 inches in height. It's very, it's not offensive in any way, shape, or form. It's made out of concrete. And Joe has one in front of his house by his front door, and the homeowners association is coming after him. So we're going to go after the homeowners associations on Friday. I read some very sad news. I learned about it just a couple minutes ago. H. Ross Perot has passed away. H. Ross Perot ran for president in 1992 against William Jefferson Blythe Clinton. And through a deal with the Clinton crime syndicate, H. Ross Perot stepped down and left the race. Well, I was in the Perot corporate building in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. I was working for a bank, and 5 guys were interviewing EDS, Electronic Data Systems, which was H. Ross Perot's company. And it was the most impressive Spartan company I have ever seen. I mean, that company ran like a clock. I was so impressed. They were providing computer services to our bank. And before we agreed to use them, we had a lot of questions. And I was in the data communications part of banking for our bank. And the systems programmers were the applications programmers. So there were 5 of us that drove out to Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, to interview the company and see if we thought that we were doing our due diligence to see if they were of the caliber that we expected to be engaging in business with, and they were. Well, on the way out the door, I stopped and asked the secretary behind the bulletproof glass, who was the CEO, because I didn't meet him or her. And she said, well, he's out of the office today. They're filming a movie about him called On Wings of Eagles. You need to see it, class, On Wings of Eagles. And it's the H. Ross Perot story. Richard Crenna is in this movie, On Wings of Eagles. You need to see it. Well, I was so impressed all the way home in the car with the guys. I was saying, boy, if we could just get a guy like that to run for president. Well, this was in like 1984. If we could just get a guy like this to run for president, boy, we'd have it made. And then in 1992, he did run for president. Now, I didn't meet him. However, I have the next best thing. I have his car. I have H. Ross Perot's car in my possession, right here at the farm. And just so you might get an inkling of how ahead of this guy's time he was, well, his car was a white 1979 Porsche 928. That was one of the most sophisticated, well, back then in 1979, it was the most sophisticated car Porsche ever built. It's white with a buckskin leather interior. It's got an automatic transmission, a V8, and this particular V8 is an all-aluminum V8, except for the crankshaft and connecting rods. So the engine, the cylinders, the pistons are all aluminum. This is a racing machine. This is an impressive vehicle. When they first came out, they were just around $30,000 new. By the time it went out of production, they were at about $100,000. It's extremely sophisticated. It's an impressive machine. And I just have one regret, that I didn't get off that letter to H. Ross Perot, letting him know that we were the owners of his old car, the 1979 Porsche 928. So that's my little bit of story about H. Ross Perot. I wish he had been president. He would have been very much like our current president, Donald Trump. From what I could tell about him, he was no nonsense. He was thrifty. He appreciated excellence. He demanded excellence. He wouldn't settle for anything less. It was H. Ross Perot. And Mr. Perot, we're very sad to see you leave. Rich Scheben?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is you just can't help it, can you? You just can't help it. It doesn't matter what we talk about. You're going to dovetail to cars. Folks, I've had a lot of private conversations with Mr. Vincent Finelli over the years. And it is unbelievable. You can talk about vegetables. You could talk about tomatoes and cucumbers. You could talk about study of birds and ornithology. You could talk about economy. This man could bridge that conversation back to a car at a moment's notice. But, all tongue-in-cheek aside, he was a great man, and I think there's plenty of evidence to show, basically what we talked about, like with Kevin Shipp's paraphrase there, and a lot of things we talk about, how the aristocracy, mainstream media, the powers that be, their whole MO is to distract, dumb down, and divide the American people by groups. Their job is to create propaganda, lies, false flags, and hoaxes all day long. So I think from what I've read, Perot was a great businessman, and he did his best to warn us of the things that are coming, like real wages going down, retail sales going down, productivity growth going down, personal discretionary income going down, U.S. durable goods going down. Basically, the middle class is broke. Remember that giant sucking sound, the quote that he's known for? So we're really running on debt, credit, subsidies, and bubbles right now. And from what I've read, he was supposed to lose, even though he had the momentum to win because he wasn't part of the in crowd. He was going to fix the economy, and the elite do not want that. They do not want prosperity for the average Joe. They want a caste system. They have an addiction to power, money, and control. It's just like this article right here on Zero Hedge. Job openings suffer worst start to a year since 2009. Now, a lot of the Economic 101 data that I release is data that I read, that I research. And I'm not trying to be a cynic. I'm not trying to give bad news. I'm not trying to create a conspiracy theory. It's just that we have a situation that the true entitlements really go to the welfare of government jobs and high corporate America and all the bailouts. All the money printing and the subsidies and the special interest lobbyists and PACs, they get bailed out. They're too big to fail, too big to jail. So this is why they use Hegelian dialectic and media propaganda and professional wordsmithing and subliminal messaging in every movie in order to distract us. And at the same time, they're rewarding mediocrity and turning America into the law of diminishing returns. So opportunity for the little people is not available. And I think if Ross Perot had been elected president, I think we would have seen America in a better position. Now, I realize we are still the cleanest shirt in a dirty laundry regarding our fiat currency, but that's one of the reasons why I talk about QE for the people, because we've bailed out all the big people through printing money out of thin air, fractional reserve lending to the banks, stock buybacks. I've given countless examples of welfare to the rich. They create malinvestments on the people's back, and they don't have to pay for it. And they don't even have to go to jail when they do things against the rule of law. This is why I talk about, if we're going to be heading to a deflationary, stagflationary environment, which we are every day, if we had a thriving economy, our interest rates would be going up. Well, we saw what happened in December. Okay? Interest rates are a function of economic growth, wages, and inflation. We've talked about this in detail. We're heading in the opposite direction. The inflation that's out there is manufactured to support the corporate oligarchies and big government. So, if we could get the long end of the yield curve down and have all the little people and all the zombie companies refinance off their variable rates to a fixed rate and actually have the little guy, maybe if we even go to negative, Switzerland's the number one country to live in the world. Switzerland's the only country that has a negative rate on their 30-year bond. What if we did something like that? What if everybody, all the little people, got a little money back at the end of that fiscal year after paying their bills? That's what I mean for QE for the people. Now, it's like a 10-step program. I think we also need laws of excess, because all the big money is buying treason, sedition, and espionage all over the world. We have to realize that GDP means nothing to the little people. So does unemployment. So does CPI and inflation. It's all a bunch of crap, and it has nothing to do with class envy, because we have proved over and over and over again that things like group identity politics and victim group status is made to dismantle the people and make us submissive and keep the little people down. And as long as we keep falling for these tricks of all this different division on race, gender, sex, religion, and ideology, and all the race baiting and sex baiting and gender baiting, as long as we allow them to manufacture perception, pity, guilt, ideology, and sway public opinion and hold on to the narrative, we're going to lose. The biggest, number one thing we need right now is reading, research, and guts. We need Americanism. We need patriotism. We need people like Kevin Shipp, and William Binney, and so many people we've mentioned on the air to stick up for the little guy and the rule of law. If we don't have rule of law, then everything's gone. This is why I talk about standing for principle. And pardon the redundancy, folks, but there's 3 criteria. It's very simple. The same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody. The second is truth. And the third is, if someone has less consequences for their behavior because what group they come from, then you get to do it too. And then that leads us to practice what you preach laws. Because aren't you tired, people, of having the elite and the aristocracy tell you how to live, what to say, what to do, who to do it with, but they're not following what they say?
I've just got a couple quick comments, Rich Scheben. One, you mentioned something like the GDP, meaning the gross domestic product, means nothing to the little people. I want to tell you, you are absolutely right. Class, I hope you heard that very clearly. It means nothing to us. There are lies, the numbers are lies, but it really doesn't affect our lives to where we can feel it individually. So you're absolutely right. And another thing I want to mention was about the Ross Perot, Bill Clinton 1992 presidential election. Ross Perot was really climbing in the numbers. People thought, wow, this guy actually has a chance. And I wanted him to be president. I really did. As a matter of fact, I have the bumper sticker that, and a copy of the movie on Wings of Eagles. I have a bumper sticker that says Perot in 1992 for president. So why did H. Ross Perot pull out? Well, there are beliefs that he was threatened, or that his family was threatened, or that his daughter was threatened. Like, if you continue this race, terrible things will happen. That's one rumor or piece of speculation. Another piece, which isn't talked about very much, is a backroom deal. Because as I've learned about this, Bill Clinton and Ross Perot's teams were talking every day. Bill Clinton and H. Ross Perot. And the rumor that I heard, or the speculation that I heard, was that, all right, Ross, if you pull out of the election, we will give you the contract to build the Social Security Administration software. You pull out and you get the job, which will be billions of dollars in terms of software development. So that was, maybe it was the carrot and the stick. Maybe it was the threats to the Perot family. And, well, I'll tell you what, we can make it really nice. All you have to do is back out, and we'll give you this huge contract to develop the Social Security system. So that's what I had heard. And I just got an email from the CEO of Laclede Electric, and here is the final copy. He modified mine. Mine was the maximum of 110 words. He modified it with my approval to 8 words more than the maximum. So, yeah, here it is. Vincent Finelli. This is the final. Vincent Finelli, 67, an outsider, is a most unusual candidate. He is known to despise politicians, liars, and dishonesty. Chosen by the Laclede Electric Cooperative members demanding lower electric bills, he's running by petition for the fourth time. Never before has anyone done that. He's been a farmer, 50-year mechanic, race car driver, inventor, teacher, fireman, marshal, founder of 5 corporations, father, husband, volunteer, and national Monday through Friday radio broadcaster, competing with the biggest names in radio. Vincent is the only candidate who designed and built a residential net-metered solar electric power plant that currently provides electricity to Laclede Electric Cooperative's power supplier and members at 2.3 cents per kilowatt hour. Bachelor's degree 1976, master's degree 1978. He designed Fortune 100 computer systems that lowered customers' bills. So that is the final copy. I approved it, and the CEO approved it. That's what's going to be published. And you'll be able to see it, and I'll tell you about the link as soon as I see the link being made available. So that's it, Rich.
Yeah, well, sounds good to me. Unfortunately, we had this discussion earlier in the show and privately. I don't think that when votes are being counted in the back room, I think that's their plan B. I think it's rigged from the start. And going back to what you said about Ross Perot, I read a few stories about him being threatened, and conformity comes in many ways: threats, intimidation, blacklisting, blackmail, bribes, and sometimes it's all the above to get people to shut up. But I think the people are getting tired of the fact that we no longer have rule of law, that truth does no longer matters. Now think about it, folks. When you go to a job, you go to your college, you go to your public school, you listen to a radio show, you read a book. If truth doesn't matter and everything's lies, propaganda, hoaxes, and false flags, what's the sense in living? That's where we are right now in America.
And you can't plan without truth. You cannot prepare without truth. We'll be right back. Chris Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. And if you'd like to buy a copy of the book, One New York Man's Journey to Off-Grid, Living in Montana. Rich Scheben does live off-grid. He does not have anything like Laclede Electric's power lines coming to his house or any other power lines coming to his house. He generates his own electricity with his solar array, battery bank, charge controller, and inverter. So he lives off-grid. Rich, you mentioned FISA, F-I-S-A, and I think we should define that for anyone new to the class. That stands for Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. So the United States Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court is a U.S. federal court established and authorized under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of 1978 to oversee requests for surveillance warrants against foreign spies in the United States. Foreign spies and agents of foreign powers suspected of espionage or terrorism. That's what it's for. But it seems to be something that was manipulated to spy on us, just the hardworking people of America. So it's just like everything else the government does. It gets abused. And Rich, do you ever wonder, did you mention cars? Since you mentioned cars.
No, I did not mention cars.
Did you ever wonder what, this is kind of interesting. Did you ever wonder what happened to the American station wagon? Okay. It was a great concept. It was a great vehicle. It was, you could put more people in it. You could go shopping and put the purchases in the back. Some of them had rear seats, so you could put 8, 9 people in a station wagon. It was like the way to go. Well, the federal government, through its quest and demands that automakers have vehicles that got better fuel economy, they killed the station wagon. The federal government killed it. And so what happened was Lee Iacocca found kind of a loophole that he had these trucks. They were called vans. And these vans were exempt from the fuel economy requirements by the federal government because they were trucks. So what he did was he put some windows in a van, like a service delivery van, and called it a minivan and sold to soccer moms. And they loved it. So now they had vans, but the vans were less aerodynamic, got lousy gas mileage, and then that led into pickup trucks. Now everybody has a pickup truck that gets worse mileage than the station wagons would have gotten if the economy was improved on them. So what happened? The federal government told us what to do, and they made it worse. It's like everything they do. I just wanted to go on that, just that little bit of trivia. That's what happened to the American station wagon. And the reason I mention that is we have 3 station wagons here at the farm, and I think they're awesome. And the finest looking station wagon that was ever built in terms of style was the Volvo 740 turbo station wagon. It was, and the commercial was pretty cool. They showed a Lamborghini attached to a little trailer. They said you could have that or you could have the Volvo station wagon. And they were right. You could get, it came with a turbo and you could put a boost kit in it and that thing, that flew. So just another little bit of trivia. In my opinion, the finest looking station wagon ever made was the Volvo 740 turbo station wagon. Rich, what's next?
Well, hey, did anybody out there have a stopwatch to see how long Vince went before he started talking about cars again?
Yep.
Well, what you're talking about, Vince, and what we talk about often, and I'm going to bridge to this, is the war on truth and education and the lack of mentor-protege relationships and the misallocation of funds with education to, again, feather the status quo. You know, where education, we should be hiring people who are teachers who have worked, and this is from kindergarten all the way to the highest level in college. You should have a qualification of a minimum of 15 years of successful private business in your bio to be qualified as a teacher. I mean, there is study after study after study that I've read. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this information from the mainstream media and the Googles and the Facebooks, they do everything in their power to purge this information. But there's many studies out there that show, and I'm just going to paraphrase for the conclusion, that show an increased money for education does not result in even a fractional amount of learning increase. Now the only exception to that is if they measure social and political indoctrination. That is it. So we could take our resources, especially our capital resources, especially from the taxpayer dollars, Kitty, and put it to much better use. But it's all being used to, again, lies, propaganda, false flags, and hoaxes. It's being used to manufacture perception and hold on to the narrative. That's all it is. That's what everything is. This is why they try to divide us at every step of the way. And when you see what's happening with our economy, with our demographic situation, we have, baby boomers retired, not just baby boomers, World War II generation still alive. I know people in Generation X who are retired. Well, we have 10,000 people per day going into retirement. And when you look at the peak spending, it's between 45 and 47 years old. And then you look at the millennial generation, they're not having children as much. We've talked about in great detail central bank corrupt monetary policies and Keynesian economics, which are connected at the hip. And then we've talked also till I'm blue in the face about group identity politics, where you lower the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job based on what group you're in, which is an absolute insult to work ethic, ability, and intelligence, which does nothing but degrades and disrespects certain group So you never empower a nation in the long run by rewarding mediocrity. So, and we've talked about all this in hours of detail. And this is why truth is so important. This is why reading and research is so important. We always say on USA Prepares, folks, that you don't have to believe us. We hope we give you enough information to make you want to research this and look it up yourself. Now, with all the information being purged and all the, you mentioned about my book, Vince. I don't even push my book. I haven't done it in years because I don't know what people are going to get. They might get a book on Godzilla versus Mothra. I mean, I've had books come to me where the first chapter, the second chapter, the table of contents, everything has been deleted. I've got books coming to me where, and this is through Amazon and Lightning Source, the printer, where the words have been switched around and changed, or sentences have been deleted, or one word was supposed to be in this portion of the sentence and gets pushed over to that portion of the sentence. I don't know. No one knows what you're going to get anymore because of the big tech. And I've talked about this earlier in the show, how Facebook, Google, Amazon, but it's worth repeating, has billions of dollars of contracts with the CAA for cloud services. It's all about AI. It's about controlling the people. So you dovetail all this with robotics, automation, and artificial intelligence, the new technocracy taking all of our jobs, and then food with all the flooding that's happened, and the lesser food production, our economic situation that Donald Trump inherited. I don't see, just by math, things getting better. And this is why we try so hard to get you to grow a garden, to buy a piece of land, to raise some animals, to live off grid, to gain skill sets. The happiest people in life, folks, are the people who have a balance in life. Again, it's not GDP, it's not CPI, it's not inflation, it's not unemployment. It's being out of debt, having skill sets, and being in nature. And I do not buy when people say they have no time, because the average American spends 7 to 8 hours per day on their television and smartphone.
They have time. They have time. They just have different priorities. Dan in Texas, you're on with Rich Scheben. Welcome.
Hi, yes. It's been a while since I called, and I just am a week behind listening to your show from last week with Rich, and you guys were talking about alcohol, so I just turned on. So I wanted to know, were you familiar with alcohol can be a gas from almost 100 years ago?
When you say a gas, you mean if the gas is stored, it can be compressed and turned into a liquid? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I don't know if you're familiar with Daryl Hannah from the Splash movie.
No.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, she was. I am familiar with her.
She was really promoting about 8 years ago how alcohol can be a gas. And back in the days, you could fill up your Model T or Model A, clicking it one way to fill it up with gas, or go to a big city and fill it up with Rockefeller's billion-dollar business.
Well, I'll tell you, Dan, I've talked about this for many years. We have enough natural gas in this country that we actually burn it out. And you look at, you especially go all over Canada, they're literally burning their natural gas in the air. If we harvested our natural gas for North America, we would not, every owner of a vehicle would not pay over $1 a gallon.
And like I said from last week, I was listening about how making your own wine at home. So that's what made me call in, because I just turned in your station. So I don't know if you already talked about making wine at your own home yet. So I apologize for missing the first 90 minutes.
That's something that we do need to talk about, making wine. Rich, maybe we should do that next week. We'll do Let's spend an hour talking about how to make wine. You've made wine. I've made wine. We'll talk about some of the things that we've done. We'll talk about yeast and alcohol toxicity, meaning the alcohol that is made by the fermentation process kills off the yeast, and that's why there are different kinds of yeast that have different toxicity levels, and that's why some wines have a greater alcohol percentage or content. We can talk about that. And from what I understand, most methanol is produced from natural gas. And so you're right. Alcohol is a fuel. And it's very clean burning. As a matter of fact, if you have an alcohol lamp, doctors used to use that to sterilize needles. There's no soot, no smell, and pretty great fuel, except we're wasting it in cars. Rich Scheben's with us. Dan in Texas is with us. Dan, are you requesting that we talk about growing wine? Is that something that you're asking? Because that's not a problem.
Yeah, and I just, when I listened to your show from last week, just trying to figure out, wow, it's amazing how alcohol's been the bad guy from over 100 years ago with the Rockefellers and all the elite trying to have the prohibition when alcohol could be running our cars and our engines and all that instead of this disgusting gasoline that's destroying our world.
Well, it could. However, alcohol does not have as many BTUs as gasoline. And I experimented back in the 1970s when I was racing cars and building race engines and actually building race cars on the track. I could measure the improvement or lack of improvement by how well the car did, and I could tell scientifically. And I can tell you for sure that mixing alcohol with gasoline lowers the performance of a gasoline engine. There just aren't as many BTUs in a gallon of alcohol as there are in a gallon of gasoline. And diesel has even more, but it burns slowly, relatively slowly. But in terms of teaching a class on how to grow wine, which means grow some grapes or grow some plants that have sugar content, yes, you can make wine. And I'm looking forward to doing that because I have done that. I know how to do it. I know Rich knows how to do it. And we can compare our thought processes and our experiences and do that. Dan, have you grown a garden in Texas?
Yes, I have. In fact, trying to listen from last week, all the things that he's growing up in northern Montana. It's amazing how it's pretty easy in, how should I say, in Houston to build some of the, or to grow some of these things compared to when I was living in Las Vegas, where it's tough to have a green thumb. But I'm almost done listening to that survival show, and I've noticed how just all the different ways that they've done to help you from like 1976, and almost every episode they're drinking some kind of wine, and that, of course, is homemade. So that's kind of interesting. That got me thinking about it when you guys just played from last week about making your own wine.
What was your reaction? You're talking about the BBC production called Survivors, Survivors, which I recommended wholeheartedly to our class, the original one. And then there was another one from the 90s, which was not quite as good. But what was your reaction to watching Survivors? Was it an eye-opener?
Yeah, I mean, trying to watch some of those Survivor shows on TV and what you guys have talked about, it's just the BBC with a low budget has pretty made it practical, thinking, okay, if you have a chemist, if you have a scientist, if you have an engineer, you can survive in certain situations, but you need people all to put forward and get off the couch and actually do something now instead of wait until the guacamole hits the fan.
And that's something that neither Rich Scheben nor I, I'm speaking for me, I don't think I've been as effective as I'd like to have been. Trying to get people off the couch. It's impossible. It's actually impossible to get people to vote to lower their electric costs. Can't even do that because it's too hard. It's really too hard. I don't get it.
The leaders in that TV show kind of talked about how it's tough to motivate people when you try to run it like you want. They're just going to leave the little campsite, so to speak.
And they have their own agendas. Each person has his own agenda and reasons for doing things. And what it showed is people will lie. They're in a survival mode, and some people will still lie to each other at the detriment of the whole for their own individual, to satisfy their own individual greed. It's unbelievable. And it's true. I see it all the time. People, we have become me first. And ever since the cell phone, it's gotten worse. More me first.
Yeah, well, I thank you for all you do. I ordered the moringa. I should be getting that in the mail any day. So keep on doing what you're doing, because there are people like me that listen to you and know that a lot of people are just not willing to put forth the effort. So God bless you and the rest of your crew.
Well, Dan, thank you. And you know, it's not me. It is the faculty of USA Prepares. It really is. It's the faculty that devotes their time, taking away from other things they could be doing for their personal lives. They devote their time to spend it with us. And I am extremely thankful to Rich Scheben and John Regan, Guineith, Norm, Ricky Rocket, and Steve Elkins, John Statmiller, Ted Anderson, all the people who are involved in making this possible. I want to thank all of you. Rich, any quick comments before we go?
Just to give a little ratio of my carboy, 5-gallon carboy here, I have 10 pounds of grapes, 5 gallons of water, and 5 crushed Camden tablets, just for a ratio.
Mm-hmm. And a bubbler to keep oxygen from getting in and other bacteria from getting in, right?
That's correct. There's a water bubbler up on top. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And you can make your own wine. And who cares what the government says? By the way, they say you can make up to 200 gallons a year for your own private consumption. I suggest you do that. Dan in Texas, thank you so much for being with us. Rich Scheben, thanks again for being with us.